Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and I just wanted to give you a quick little message from one of our sponsors, Element. It's spelled LMNT, but pronounced Element. If you haven't heard about this, Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means there's a lot of salt with no sugar, and it's formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited for those doing a keto, low carb, or paleo diet. And I think this is great for athletes, especially in the summertime and when you're training in warmer climates. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. None of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers. That's it. I like the unsweetened one because the other flavors do have a little stevia, but stevia doesn't do well in my body. So I prefer the unsweetened Element, and I like the packets because I can throw them in my bike bag when I go on a long bike ride or when traveling, and I can just dump a packet in my water, and it keeps me so much more hydrated. Because remember, we don't sweat out water, we sweat out minerals. So check it out. You've got a nice little gift from them if you use our discount code Drink Element. I'll put the link in the show notes. But using the code Low Carb Athlete, you get a free gift with purchase. You get a free Element sample pack with any order when you order with Low Carb Athlete on our special URL code. So support the podcast, support Element. It's backed by science, and we love what they're doing. So try it out. Hey guys, it's Debbie Potts, and I am going to do a podcast, and I'm putting this on YouTube so you can see the slides or the blogs, pictures. First, I want to start with a little website share. LMNT. If you don't drink Element already, check this out. Element, or LMNT, is what I put in my water all day long, especially at nighttime. It really helps me. But they have a great website. I just was looking at it about the science behind Element and the formulation. And I'm hoping to have Rob Wolf or Luis back on the show again, just to focus on electrolytes, because I see people at the gym every day carrying around these big old gallon jugs of water. And really, I think we need to pay attention if we're just going to the bathroom all the time and still feel dehydrated. So if you are drinking just plain water, you might want to look at doing filtered water and adding electrolytes as Element. Now, here is the grapefruit salt, for example, 1,000 milligrams, 200 milligrams, or 1,000 milligrams sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, 60 grams of magnesium. Now, if you get the flavors, you have to remember what's in it is stevia leaf extract. I, for some reason, get headaches immediately from anything with stevia. So I choose the unsweetened, but there's citrus salt, watermelon salt. They're so good with sparkling water. Orange salt, raspberry, mango chili, chocolate salt, and they have some other chocolate ones that are really good in hot water. Chocolate caramel, another good hot water one. And so check these out. Now, the variety pack you can get with the podcast code is Low Carb Athlete. So when you order your preferred Element, you can get a free variety pack of sticks of all the different ones if you use your code. So check out LMNT and look at their articles. I posted one the other day on my Facebook page. But does your body need more electrolytes? I find that I put salt on everything. I use Redmond sea salt on my food. I've been putting my coffee, but I put Element unsweetened in my coffee the other day, and I just feel like I need it. My body feels better with it. So use your own body's innate intelligence, figure out if you're too low in electrolytes, if you're sweating a lot, maybe you're doing low carb, maybe you're doing fasting, and you might want to learn more. So I just want to start with that. Now, the purpose of this podcast today is to talk about muscle health and the confusion, I think, of AMPK pathway and mTOR and muscle protein synthesis. So just to start with, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon has made a huge impact I was thinking how I first met her at the Nutritional Therapy Conference right before our world changed in February 2020. And she spoke about muscle health back then, and I interviewed her on the podcast. And since then, she's created a huge impact in our society about the importance of not feeling that you're overweight, but maybe you're under muscled. And as I focus more on how to improve the aging process, and as this podcast, most of our listeners are active individuals, but we're getting older. And I am on a personal mission to avoid the stereotype of changes that happen as we age, especially for females, and changing my body composition. And right now I'm really focused on my under eyes because they're puffy and wrinkly and I don't like it. So muscle health, skin health, metabolic health, they're all important markers. What we've been hearing a lot about lately is VO2 max. I've been talking about it a lot in the show lately because I do PNOE metabolic testing. I'm growing a new business in North San Diego, and I can take my PNOE kit wherever I want because it's in a little suitcase. And I think it's important to know your training zones and know your VO2 max. But I do not think it is all you should do. And when I'm doing my coaching assessment with people doing metabolic testing with me, I'm looking at the data going, do you need more zone 2 in sprint training or more just zone 2? Or do you need more HIIT training and strength training? Because there's so much focus on VO2 max as the marker of longevity. Yes, that's an important part. But so is muscle health. So Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, head to her website. If you have not read her book, Forever Strong, it's a very good read to read and give your friends and family. The 3 keys of muscle health. Dr. Lyon created the muscle-centric medicine program, and it improves muscle health through 3 key elements: nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle. So you can check out her website, but nutrition, I'll give you a little recap. Proper nutrition via protein smart diet activates muscle protein synthesis. This is an important part. I keep telling my clients when I'm doing their food and exercise logs, I have them check in on Fridays to look at their weekly log and looking at what they're eating and when and how much protein. A lot of people don't eat enough protein. So Dr. Gabrielle Lyon has really shown a lot to me about muscle protein synthesis and the research they share in their podcast. But not all proteins are created equal. And this is an important part of the plant-based proteins versus animal protein that you need to kind of look at more of the profile of amino acids. So consider your preferences to ensure you consume the suitable types amounts of protein to give the body that you have, that the one body you have that you can take ownership of, the building blocks it needs for optimal muscle health. Now, the other part of muscle health is exercise. When you have your muscles contracting in exercise, endurance, and strength, they release anti-inflammatory response called myokines. These myokines are closely linked with enhanced mood and cognition. And as you go through a program as Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, or what I do with my clients, what Wild Health does, precision medicine based program they use, is looking at what type of exercise you should do, how often, how long, what intensity, what type. But also there's lifestyle. And we can't forget, if you have a bad sleep, it kind of ruins everything you're trying to do. And if you're stressed out, it kind of ruins everything you're trying to do. So we really need to work on more of a holistic approach, as I call the holistic method. The way I coach clients is not just looking at their exercise and nutrition, but let's look at your sleep data. Let's look at your Oura Ring score, for example, and look at your sleep hygiene routine and how you start the day. What was your deep sleep and REM sleep looking like? Heart rate variability, your resting heart rate. What changes do we see from your baseline? Because that's going to make a difference as well in your overall health and longevity. But what Dr. Gabrielle says on her website, lifestyle, emotional health is critical to your quality of life. Physical health triggers mental health, and mental health invokes emotional health, which is crucial in your positive physical transformation. So going into the reasons behind your current habits and creating new ones with meaning and purpose is fundamental to your success. And she talks a lot about that mindset in her book. A quote from Dr. Lyon, muscle is perhaps the most important organ system to combat our current health crisis, regain exceptional health, and maximize physical performance. Muscle health becomes more important as we age, yet it's often the most overlooked, even by modern day medical practices. Her muscle-centric medicine focus on this, the organ of longevity. Muscle is fast becoming the sixth vital sign. So you can read more on their website, drgabrielleline.com. The silent epidemic, muscle loss. The current obesity epidemic is not just an epidemic of being over fat, but also being under muscled. Loss of muscle leads to rises in cortisol, insulin, stress hormones, and blood sugar levels. These issues can occur quietly without a lot of gains in weight, which is why it's vital to measure these markers of your internal health. So focusing on increasing muscle strength instead of the pathology of obesity, we treat disease and create a platform for sustainable vitality and dynamic wellness. So that's why I love her approach and really looking at anabolic resistance, as it says here. As we age, our bodies become more resistant to common anabolic stimuli such as dietary protein and exercise, blunting the process of muscle protein synthesis. To combat this anabolic resistance, your diet needs to become increasingly protein rich as you age and when you continue to pursue targeted resistant exercise. So with that, you can check out more information. They do have really good free resources here, the 30-gram recipes, shopping list, protein chart, and more information on her strength training program and 5-day programs on there. So let's go into muscle protein synthesis and the Goldilocks effect. We've heard about AMPK pathway and mTOR, and I wanted to dive into this as a rabbit hole for today's show is that mTOR is like cortisol. It's similar to insulin, just in the role that too much of anything is not great, too little of something is not great. What is the right amount as hormesis, that right amount of stress on your body that creates a positive effect, acute stress versus chronic stress? Now, AMPK pathway, let's go into what that is. And because we hear a lot about this, why we need to do fasting and prolonged fasting. And this is what I went down rabbit holes and I put this in my blog page, but fasting versus exercise. Do we really need to do so much fasting or should we focus on exercise? And what I've talked a lot about and thought a lot about last few years is the changes in looking at muscle-centric medicine and muscle protein synthesis when we are doing so much fasting, when we're doing just one meal a day, even if you're doing your exercise, right amount of strength training and not focusing on cardio as this zone 2 trend right now, we need to focus on getting in the gym, lifting heavy weights. But when we're only eating one meal a day and focused on this intermittent fasting of 16 to 24 hours, or OMAD, it would be like 20-hour fast, we're not hitting the protein goals because it has to be in doses throughout the day. Okay, so AMPK. It is a AMPK and mTOR. The real word is activated protein kinase, and then mTOR is mechanistic target of rapamycin. There are two key signaling pathways that play critical roles in cellular metabolism energy regulation. Both pathways are involved in cellular responses to nutrient availability and energy status. They often have opposing effects on various cellular processes. So I wanted to dive into this as my rabbit hole podcast topic, because I keep thinking, well, mTOR, we need to grow muscle, but then we keep hearing about AMPK. So the benefits of AMPK, they're energy sensing. AMPK acts as a cellular energy sensor. This is detecting changes in the AMP to ATP ratios. When cellular energy levels are low, which would be a high AMP to ATP ratio, AMPK is activated. Also benefits as metabolic regulation. AMPK activation leads to metabolic adjustments aimed at restoring energy balance, such as promoting glucose uptake, fatty acid oxidation, and inhibiting energy-consuming processes like protein synthesis. So right there, yes, it sounds great. Glucose, burn more fat, but then another side, stop protein synthesis. So right now, that's a red flag. We don't want to be in an AMPK all the time, because we're challenging that aging process of sarcopenia and losing muscle mass. And the more we're over on one side too much, it's not better. We need a little balance of both, the Goldilocks effect. So also cellular homeostasis. AMPK helps maintain cellular homeostasis by coordinating energy production and consumption, thus promoting cell survival during stressful conditions. Longevity. We hear about fasting all the time for longevity. Activation of AMPK has been associated with increased lifespan in various model organisms. Now, I was wondering, the Goldilocks effect, I always say, the right amount of both. Both are beneficial, AMPK and mTOR. Now, we need the energy balance. We need the nutrient sensors. We need to know when we need to get more energy and when we're losing muscle mass more than we are gaining it, we're in that catabolic state. And if we're stressed out all the time, is this really beneficial for our aging process? So the balance between mTOR and AMPK is important for health, longevity, and muscle health, right? So mTOR is a protein kinase that regulates cell growth, proliferation, and metabolism in response to nutrients, growth factors, and energy levels. It's promoting anabolic processes as protein synthesis, lipid synthesis, and cell growth when nutrients and energy are abundant. Activation of mTOR is essential for muscle protein synthesis, I hate saying that word, which is crucial for muscle growth and repair, especially after exercise or injury. So we have to remember mTOR is not a bad thing. Insulin's not always a bad thing. It's when we have too much of something. Cortisol is not a bad thing. It's when we're doing stuff chronically is not positive. So remember, AMPK is a cellular energy sensor activated in low energy levels. So when we're fasting or lower calorie intake, or we have metabolic stress. So I'm not an expert, obviously, in this. I just was looking this up and curious. Okay, what about the balance of the two? They're opposing, like a teeter-totter. Anabolic versus catabolic. mTOR promotes anabolism, while AMPK promotes catabolism, breakdown versus building. Obviously, we need to have balance in two, or else we'd be breaking ourselves down all the time. Both processes are necessary for maintaining a healthy balance of cellular growth and repair. Growth versus maintenance. On or off. mTOR activation supports growth and adaptation, such as muscle hypertrophy, whereas AMPK activation supports cellular maintenance and stress resistance, promoting longevity at a cellular level. And then energy balance, mTOR is activated in response to nutrient abundance and promotes energy-consuming processes. Sounds good. On the other side, AMPK is activated under conditions of energy depletion and promotes energy conservation and production. So it's an optimal balance between the two, mTOR to AMPK activity, to ensure efficient cellular function, adaptations to changing environmental conditions, and longevity. Too much of mTOR, excessive activation, can often be seen in conditions of chronic nutrient excess or overstimulation, as excessive protein or sedentary lifestyle may lead to a metabolic dysregulation, insulin resistance, and accelerating aging. On the other side, excessive AMPK activation is seen in conditions with chronic energy depletion or chronic stress, may lead to muscle wasting and impaired growth. So we need to have this delicate balance, dynamic balance between these two pathways, such as finding the right amount of exercise, your nutrition, and stress management to improve your health and longevity. So to me, longevity isn't just about AMPK pathway. To me, longevity is also the muscle health, your metabolic markers. But how do we improve muscle health? You have to be muscle protein synthesis, stimulate mTOR, but the right amount of each. So what activates AMPK pathway? So I went down this rabbit hole. How do we do it? AMPK, high levels of AMP indicate low energy status, directly activate AMPK. Exercise, physical activity, cardio, endurance type exercise increases the AMP to ATP ratio, activating AMPK. Metformin, this article said, commonly used for type 2 diabetes. Ideally, we want to look at berberine, some other alternatives, but metformin activates AMPK, leading to improved glucose uptake and utilization. Fasting or calorie restriction, reduced amount of calories increases the AMP to ATP ratio. This activates AMPK pathway, and this promotes metabolic adaptations. All right, so what about mTOR? mTOR activators are nutrients as amino acids, especially leucine. We've heard Dr. Lehman's 2.7, I think it is, to 3.0 grams of leucine you need within all essential amino acids to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So you need that 30, 50 grams of protein, more likely to have more animal base, to get 30, 50 grams of protein with the right essential amino acid profile that includes leucine around 2.7, 3 grams to 2.7 around 3 to 3 grams. Okay, so growth factors as insulin-like growth factors activate mTOR. So there's insulin is not a bad thing. It's when it's activated too much. That's going to promote cell growth and proliferation. But obviously, if we have that happening too much as cancer cells, that would not be good. Energy status. mTOR activation is influenced by cellular energy status with high ATP levels promoting its activation. Oxygen levels. mTOR is sensitive to oxygen levels, so high hypoxia, low oxygen, inhibits its activity. So that would be breath work, breath holds, I assume. That would mean you go AMPK pathway, right? So need and timing of the mTOR versus AMPK pathway depends on various factors: metabolic status, cellular energy levels, and physiological demands. So examples we got here: fasting or calorie restriction. When you're maybe doing 500 calories a day, activation of AMPK helps mobilize energy stores, so stored energy, promoting energy conservation as well. After exercise, AMPK activation helps replenish depleted energy stores and promotes muscle repair and adaptation. mTOR activation is critical for promoting cell growth, tissue repair, and adaptation physiological stressors. So we have that growth and tissue repair. So you can continue on if you want to go read my blog of my continuous questions, and then you get an answer, then go, okay, well, wait, how does this work? So main focus is that mTOR isn't bad, and doing zone 2 and sprint interval training is not bad, but it's if that's all you are doing, it's not helping your muscle health as you age. And if you want to be forever strong, stronger as you age, we need to look at a balanced nutrition, fasting, and exercise program, stress management, and sleep hygiene routine. But we want to look at the functions of mTOR are with muscle protein synthesis, as mTOR promotes muscle protein synthesis, cell growth, activating pathways to lead to ribosomal protein synthesis. It inhibits autophagy. So when you are activating mTOR, you're stopping autophagy. So turning on, turning off, we have to go back and forth. So we inhibit AMPK when we are activating mTOR. So one's on or off, right? So that teeter-totter effect. So reciprocal relationship between the two pathways. When mTOR is active, it promotes processes that consume energy and inhibit autophagy. AMPK is activated during energy-deprived conditions as fasting, restricted calorie intake, and endurance cardio exercise. So this is to enhance energy conservation and production, while mTOR is activated in response to nutrient availability to promote the cell growth and protein synthesis, protein. So the two pathways are operated in a coordinated manner, with AMPK inhibiting mTOR, vice versa, to maintain cellular homeostasis in response to the changing environmental conditions. And this interplay helps cells adapt to fluctuations in nutrient and energy availability. So fasting and exercise can activate AMPK, and that helps with mitochondrial biogenesis and cellular autophagy. So your exercise, aerobic exercise, and fasting. So flip side, I get down so many rabbit holes. So what do you do? So fasting, intermittent fasting, that involves the cycle of time-restricted eating that activates the AMPK and promotes mitochondrial biogenesis and autophagy. During fasting periods, cellular energy may decrease, leading to AMPK activation as it senses your body's own innate intelligence, low energy state, and it responds by promoting energy-generating processes as mitochondrial biogenesis. Pretty amazing. Calorie restriction involves reducing overall intake, known as to also, as we said, activate AMPK. So maybe that's the alternate day fasting, or I wonder if that'd be the fasting mimicking diet, or just calorie restriction that you're doing maybe one meal a day, not getting all your calories in one meal, but maybe you're just doing one meal a day. So you're restricting calories. And then we look at exercise. Endurance exercise, aerobic exercise, activates AMPK. This type of exercise increases energy demands on cells, leading to AMPK activation to enhance energy production. Endurance exercise is shown to promote mitochondrial biogenesis and autophagy. So take note, my question earlier, do you need to do so much fasting as an athlete to create cell autophagy and mitochondrial biogenesis? No, I don't think so. And listen to my podcast 3 years ago with Rob Wolf, who brought this up. And I always found that fascinating because we were stuck doing all this fasting going, wait a minute, we're the fit and active community. We're not the metabolically unhealthy sedentary people. We don't need to be doing the same protocol they're doing because we're already exercising. You're already getting mitochondrial biogenesis. So cutting back on your fasting, focusing on your exercise and your resistance training and getting your right nutrient dense foods in, right? So exercise with a strength component, so focusing on resistance exercise, isn't as studied, of course, as endurance exercise. Resistance exercise, as weightlifting, has potential to activate AMPK and promote mitochondrial biogenesis. But what I've been reading more, that's more the mTOR activation is resistance, your strength work. Metabolic demands, muscle contractions during resistance training may contribute to AMPK. So I'm not sure if that which is right, but what I'm learning is mTOR versus AMPK is going to be the fasting and endurance exercise, then mTOR is going to be more the heavy lifting, resistance exercise. All right, so you can look at that. So what about genetics? Another rabbit hole. How are genetics? As I take Wild Health Fellowship Precision Medicine the next 6 months, I'm in this course and we go into genetics. So genetic variants you can look at. I like the DNA company, or I'll probably be using Wild Health in the future, but genetics and mTOR pathways have gene variants. So I was wondering about genetics and epigenetics because if you look at, for example, your 23andMe that a lot of people have done, you can see if you're more going to see changes in your body if you're certain genetic SNPs to be more endurance or a power athlete. So when I learned that years ago, I started switching how I train based on, well, at least the strength training part, because I read that my body will respond to doing heavier weights, fewer reps. So genetics and AMPK and mTOR, you can look up that information if you want to dive in. So how do you improve the aging process? As we are wanting to hopefully thrive as you get older, not struggle, and not wait until you're sick and broken and burned out to get healthy, we have to take ownership of our health now. So looking at nutrition, looking at stress management, sleep quality, if you should supplement with berberine, alpha lipoic acid, NAC, there's all these different ones that are looking at, and I'm actually going to Expo West Natural Product Show in March coming up here in Anaheim, and I am just focusing on the longevity supplements and eye creams, peptides, and I'll be hanging out in that section of the conference because that's where my interest is right now. In aging. So chronic inflammation with aging, I was looking that up, AMPK and mTOR. So I just shared all that in this blog on debbiepotts.net, AMPK, so you can check that out. But I just want to finish with what we do when I do a metabolic test on PNOE, the resting test. Just to share that when I do metabolic testing, it's just not about VO2 max. That's just a number. So in the exercise report, you get this 25-page report looking at all these markers. Where are you limited? Maybe your recovery. You're not doing high intensity correctly because you're not recovering in between your fat burn efficiency. So we get all of these markers, including breath analysis, and figure out what your training zones are, your 5 zones, and what should you work on to improve these markers that were not so optimal, like breathing, metabolic rate. So back end of here, we have, estimated time. We've got the markers here for the sample study, your fat max, your VT1, VT2, VO2 peak that you keep hearing about VO2 max. I would rather say VO2 peak because we wanted to see the highest you got to, and heart rate max. So we have this information on the reports. But for me to tell you if you need more strength training is more looking at What is your resting metabolism? So this test is only 10 minutes long. You just lay still. But this resting metabolic rate will help me tell you your metabolism is slower than it should be for your age, height, weight, gender. And you're not burning a lot of fat versus carbohydrates at rest. And heart fitness is your heart rate variability. And you have a lot of stress. You're not as resilient and robust. So maybe your breathing's good, and we can figure out your areas of opportunity based on this summary page here. So I want to be excellent. What's holding me back from being my best? So then I can go through with you. All right, here's your metabolism. Here's your metabolic disease risk. Are you burning carbohydrates, not fat? Are you looking at your A1C, your insulin, and your markers on metabolic health on your blood chemistry reports? And then we look at how you should improve your metabolism. And that's going to be not everything. I don't agree with oatmeal. I avoid wheat and grains with my clients, but looking at protein. How many calories do you need a day? Are you slower than normal? Let's get ballpark figure of what your RMR is, and then what your goals are. And then we can figure out how many calories do you need at rest, and how do we make you burn more calories during the day is by lifting weights and eating protein and moving more throughout the day and having more that TDE, that thermic effect. Not TDD, thermic effect of food, how you're digesting, breaking down the food, but more movement, fidgeting, more things, more movement throughout the day, body movements make a difference in this number here. So check out that. There's the sample reports on my website. And then there's lots and lots of research online that we can go into. I'll read through these on how much protein can the body use in a single meal for muscle building. Daily protein distribution. I know Brad Schoenfeld's been on a lot of the podcasts. Dr. Rhonda Patrick's had him. And this other article on anabolic resistance, muscle protein synthesis with aging. So lots of articles to go into on how we get more anabolic resistant as we get older. And we have reduced muscle protein synthesis response to protein intake is what is called anabolic resistance. So physical activity performed before protein intake increases use of one's protein-derived amino acids, postprandial muscle protein accretion and synthetic. Well, I don't want to read all that, but really interesting articles to dive into. And that's why I am focused on improving the aging process, as Dr. Gabrielle is talking about, and everyone in the social media circles of longevity. But it's not just doing zone 2 cardio. We can look at these reports we get when I do your testing, but this isn't the only part, is to work on improving your VO2 max. I want to improve your body composition. I want you to get stronger and more powerful and faster, getting those fast twitch muscle fibers. So don't just get focused on only working on your VO2 max by doing zone 2 and sprint interval training. You need to spend more time in the gym, especially if you are a female. You don't need as much zone 2. And especially as you age, we need more strength. And we battle this losing muscle because we are more anabolic resistant. So hopefully that gives you some ideas today. Hopefully you enjoyed this topic, and let me know what your thoughts are. So I will talk to you soon, and we'll go into more rabbit holes on how we can improve the aging process.
Hey, my fellow aging endurance athletes, just a reminder, if you like what you listened to today, make sure to share this episode with your community. Head to debbiepotts.net to set up a free discovery call to learn more about my personalized coaching programs, especially if you are on a mission as myself to improve the aging process and start training to be my best self when I am 80, 90 years old. So I am on a mission to live my best life and be my best self the second half of my life. So if you're on the same mission as me, head over to my website and YouTube channel to learn more ways to improve the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.